Today, we're going to be talking about 3 reasons why it's time to buy gold and silver today. Now, sometimes with the perception that gold is this archaic thing that shouldn't have any use outside of collecting it, it can be tough to consider some of the thoughtful reasons to be buying it now. Today, I want to cover 3 specific reasons that are directly correlated to our present time. In other words, right here in the middle of the 21st century, and hopefully shed some light on metals investing that you've never seen before. The first thing I want to talk about is gold's upside potential in the future. Now, at first glance, you're probably thinking, yeah, that's not new. But let me explain what I mean for a second. You see, I don't actually believe that gold is the best option for long-term ROI potential. If ROI is your main concern, you can easily find that in other asset classes that would probably outperform gold, depending on the timeline. Now, you might be thinking, if ROI isn't a concern, why does price increase matter at all? Well, it matters because, in effect, your gold is retaining its purchasing power over the long term, while also being a risk-free asset protecting you from counterparty risk at every turn. Now, what do I mean by risk-free? What do I mean by gold being risk-free? I mean that gold, by its fundamental definition, is a property on the periodic table of elements. It cannot go bankrupt. God made it, not man, and because of that, it can't be inflated and it can't be manipulated in the way that other things are. But back to the point, I do believe that in the most fundamental sense, gold's upside potential is and always will be incredible in the long run because of its natural properties. So that's the first reason, gold's upside potential. The second thing I want you guys to consider is gold as an uncertainty stabilizer. Now, what's funny about gold is that it's not uncommon for people to attribute this stabilizing character to gold because it does have an awesome track record. But at the same time, it's like those same people don't actually believe it in function. In other words, they'll agree with it on paper or in theory, but not in practice. So in that spirit, I want you guys to really think about the current situation in detail, the economic situation, geopolitical risk, all these things, and ask what could possibly be done about it on your end. Now, as of the recording of this video, there are several prolonged wars happening overseas that the U.S. is involved in. Citizens are still dealing with the after effects of the worst inflation we've experienced in 4 decades. There's a border crisis. There's uncertainties about the effects of tariffs. There's a budget deficit and debt that feels insurmountable. Not to mention the current moral state of our culture, which has its own effects into many other areas. So it's during times like this, as we ebb and flow through different periods of uncertainty in human history, that gold and silver can be there to stabilize a portion of our finances. There will always be peaks and valleys until the Lord returns. During the peaks, we can accumulate. During the valleys, we have our stabilizer already in hand. Now, beyond its inherent value as an asset, psychological factors often drive investment decisions. The perception and reality of gold as a safe haven asset means that investors often have a strong emotional draw, seeing it as a way to ease financial uncertainty or stabilize financial uncertainty during turbulent times. So that's the second thing, gold as an uncertainty stabilizer. The third thing I want you to consider is gold as a sustainable inheritance. I want you to think about the fact that throughout biblical times, we have many biblical stories where you have God's people going through a time of famine or perhaps even a time of abundance, and usually it's those times where they're having to prepare for the next wave of famine. Well, it's times like that that we go through, of course, in a more modern sense, that we can be preparing for the next years of famine. I truly believe that over the next couple of years, maybe the next 4 years, we will have opportunities to accumulate and to prepare ourselves for more unsustainable times out into the future. I want you guys to consider the fact that right now, you are preparing for the next generation and even the generation after that, whether you're thinking about it actively or not. When we accumulate our gold and silver, even at times when nobody else is, at the time of this video, investment demand for physical metals, gold and silver, is relatively low. When you guys recognize that there is something that you are preparing for, something you are building for generations to come, you can take advantage of those times of plenty and prepare for the times of quote-unquote famine later down the road. Again, an amazing biblical principle that we see time and time again throughout all of Scripture is the concept of preparing for the future, and in some cases, it's a future of famine, but preparing ahead of time in such a way as to protect our progeny down to the 3rd generation. We have an example of Joseph, of course. But further, we see the idea applied to families in a number of passages. And here's a few examples that I want to leave you guys with today. A good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. Proverbs 13:22. And in all the land were no women found so fair as the daughters of Job, and their father gave them an inheritance among their brethren. Job 42:15. House and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is from the Lord. Proverbs 19:14. But if any provide not for his own, and specially those for his own house, he hath denied the faith, and is worse than an infidel. 1 Timothy 5:8. So what we see is that being able to establish an inheritance for the next generation is extremely important. But the question is, how can one ensure that that said generation is sustainable enough to stand the test of time, both in value but also in the face of systemic risk? Obviously, other hard assets like land, livestock, mineral rights, and so forth, these can all play a big part in all of that. But one of the most attainable hard assets for anyone to start with is gold and silver. And if you believe, like I do, that we're going to experience a time of quote-unquote plenty, maybe between 2025 and 2029, then it may be time for you to start storing up a portion of that future inheritance while the times are going good, and be ready for what the future holds. That's it for today, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, check out the links in our description below, and we'll see you next time.